Revenge with Karen. I knew something was wrong when Darren, our brand new VP of operations, strutted into the all-hands meeting like he was auditioning for a reality show, pointed at one of my cybersecurity posters, and said, "Did someone lose their kindergarten art project?" The room laughed. I didn't. That poster had helped reduce phishing attempts by 73% in Q2. But sure, it's all giggle like we're at open mic night while the wolf chews through the front door. I'd spent 12 years building up our internal security culture, 12 years teaching people how not to get duped by fake invoices and urgent wire transfer scams. My posters weren't pretty. They weren't designed by some sleek branding firm, but they worked. Each one came with a blunt warning and real stats. One read, "One click equals $20K lost. Is that cat meme worth it?" Another, "Phishing doesn't need a lake, just your inbox." They were everywhere. Break room, elevators, even the stall doors in the women's restroom. And now, thanks to Darren's stand-up routine, the team was being told that protecting the company's backend was less important than keeping the office walls aesthetically pleasing. By the way, if you're enjoying this story, even a little, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. 97% of folks listening don't subscribe, and honestly, it means the world to our team. Helps us keep digging up more real stories like this one. Anyway, back to Darren and his ego in a suit. He had the vibe of a guy who'd once read half an article about innovation and thought the best way to prove leadership was to bulldoze whatever came before him. My department became his first target. Budget slashed by 40% without so much as a Slack message. My training sessions, low ROI, my proposed upgrades, tech paranoia, my posters, removed by the facilities team like they were asbestos. Darren's entire pitch to the board was about agility, streamlining, and cutting inefficiencies. I was the inefficiency, apparently. The irony? I'd streamlined more in my 12 years than he'd probably done in his entire career. I once caught a social engineering breach mid-thread because I noticed a slight grammar inconsistency in an email signature. But hey, forget vigilance. Darren wanted us to look like a startup in a shampoo commercial. At first, I tried to approach him calmly. I laid out the ROI of the awareness campaign, showed him the phishing click rate graph before and after my posters went up. I even offered to redesign them. Hell, would have slapped a pastel color palette and Comic Sans on them if it meant we kept our people alert. But Darren smiled that managerial smile, the one that says I'm not listening, I'm just waiting to speak, and patted my shoulder like I was a child showing him my crayon drawing. "Melanie," he said, "we appreciate your passion. But these fear-based tactics don't align with our culture goals. We're about positivity now. Positivity. Our servers had been pinged from Belarus 3 times last week. I didn't need positivity. I needed admin access and an intrusion detection system that didn't run on prayers and duct tape. Over the next 2 weeks, things got worse. Darren consolidated the org chart. IT and security would now report to him directly. I got shuffled out of strategic planning meetings. Even our CTO looked uncomfortable when I asked why I was suddenly off the executive email thread. I became a ghost with a badge. Except ghosts see everything. I kept my mouth shut, my smile professional, and my hands busy. I didn't fight back, not then. You don't confront a wildfire with a garden hose. You wait. You build a fire break. And you prepare the evacuation route. Began reallocating my remaining energy to something Darren didn't know existed. A hidden network of fail-safes, backups, and old-school manual protocols I'd quietly built over the years. Because if there's one thing you learn after 12 years in cyber, it's never if someone screws up. It's when. And when it happens, no one's looking at the art on the wall. They're looking for the one person who can stop the bleeding. And I had already packed my gauze. It started with a draft, just a clean, well-reasoned policy proposal labeled Security Protocol 7. It wasn't revolutionary. It was insurance. Isolate admin permissions. Strip out universal access. Layer in a heavier spam filter with AI triage on all external links. It would have cost a few extra thousand per year, less than what Darren spent catering those executive lunches that always seemed to feature Ahai tuna and imported olives. Submitted the protocol packet ahead of the weekly leadership sync, attached with a note. Recent external login attempts and credential stuffings suggest rising risk. Recommend implementation by end of Q4. 3 hours later, I was in the glass conference room on the 15th floor, seated between two people who had never even logged into the firewall dashboard. Darren skimmed the top page, leaned back in his chair like he was posing for a company brochure, and said, "This reads like bureaucratic nonsense. We're trying to accelerate, not scare people into paralysis." The room chuckled. One chuckle from him, and suddenly everyone was on the same page, desperate not to look like the guy in the room still using fax machines. The head of HR leaned in and added, "Do we really need another password requirement? People can barely remember their current ones." Even the director of sales piped up. "Couldn't we just tell people to be more careful?" I sat there, blinking. These were educated adults, people with access to sensitive client data, payroll systems, retirement account credentials, and they were treating cybersecurity like a pop-up ad. I tried to salvage it. This isn't about slowing anyone down. It's about preventing a situation where everyone is brought to a halt. Protocol 7 targets only admin-level permissions. No one else would even notice the change unless there's an active threat. Darren raised his hand like a referee calling a timeout. "Melanie, your concerns are noted, but let's not drown productivity in paranoia. We'll revisit if there's an incident." That last word echoed. If not when, if, so I smiled, nodded, closed my laptop, walked out of that meeting with a pit in my stomach and a new folder on my desktop. Protocol 7 logged objections PDF. Inside, I documented everything, every signature, every timestamp, every ignored warning. I added Darren's email response to my follow-up message. "Appreciate the vigilance, but we're deprioritizing any changes to security stack this quarter. Let's focus on user experience first." User experience, as if being hacked was somehow a better experience than clicking update settings. The deeper issue wasn't just the protocol being rejected. It was the culture shift that came with it. Suddenly, security wasn't cool. It wasn't agile. I became the workplace mom wagging her finger while everyone else wanted to ride scooters through the office and pretend risk was just a state of mind. I kept working, of course. No one said I couldn't, but my proposals went unread. My JIRA tickets got tagged as low urgency. I was told to loop in Darren before escalating, which meant don't escalate. When I tried to host a lunch and learn on phishing updates, 3 people showed up. 2 left after grabbing a sandwich. The third said she only came because she thought it was a real lunch. Even my team, my own IT guys, started acting cagey. "Hey Mel, I hear you, but if we push this patch, Darren's gonna ask questions or I'll log it. Can you follow up with him directly?" The chain of command had quietly shifted. I wasn't part of it anymore. Still, I didn't raise hell. I didn't go nuclear. I just built the record. Quietly, precisely, everything archived, stored off cloud. Printed too. I don't trust mere data to outlive a PR crisis. The creeping dread wasn't about my job. It was about the system I'd nurtured being left to rot from the inside, because I knew something the rest of them didn't. Hacks don't need war drums. They need silence. They need distraction. They need a company focused on vibes instead of verification. And we were ripe for it. It wasn't a firing. It was worse. A slow erasure disguised as realignment. I got the notice on a Thursday morning, one of those bland HR memos that reads like it was written by a chatbot hopped up on decaf. To better streamline our digital transformation initiatives, we're shifting the IT and infrastructure divisions under VP Darren Caldwell. We believe this will foster greater synergy between operations and technical teams. Translation: Darren now owned the skeleton key to every system I'd spent over a decade safeguarding. And me. It wasn't even CC'd on the internal announcement. Someone from facilities forwarded it to me with a thought you'd want to see this, as if I hadn't just watched my name vanish from every exec chain in real time. That same afternoon, my access to the senior Slack channels was revoked. My invites to Friday security syncs, canceled. Not declined, deleted, mid-thread. The true punch in the throat came a few days later. I walked past the marketing corridor, one with the big digital display board showing our new client rollouts, and there it was. "Welcome to Horizon Light, our new customer platform built for the future." A sleek splash page, clean font, happy stock people shaking hands. I had no idea what Horizon Light was. I wasn't consulted. I wasn't briefed. I hadn't seen a single ticket or documentation request. I'd spent 12 years overseeing every platform launch from a security perspective, vetting vendors, checking endpoints, encrypting API comms, and now they'd just done it without me. I stood there like a ghost staring through a window into a house I used to own. I went back to my desk, opened the system logs, searched the root server activity for Horizon Light. Someone had set up admin access using a template I wrote 7 years ago. No multi-factor auth, no user behavior alerts. Bypassed half of my protocols like someone repurposing a seatbelt to tie down a couch on a pickup truck. I pulled up the org chart on the intranet. My name was still there, but now floated alone under Security Operations Advisory role. No direct reports, no upward arrows, just me in a lonely little box like a bureaucratic paperweight. Then came the final gut punch. One morning, I walked in to find every one of my cybersecurity posters gone. All of them. Ripped down like campaign flyers after an election. In their place, minimalist art prints, beige swirls, a watercolor pineapple, a quote from someone named Brogan L. that said security is a mindset, not a memo. I checked the facility's request log. Yep, Darren had submitted a work order the night before. Subject: remove outdated security clutter. Place with art promoting modern culture. Priority level: urgent, urgent, like we were hemorrhaging creativity instead of being a soft target for ransomware. At lunch, I passed Darren's door. He was in there laughing with the COO about some AI native sales funnel pilot. My name came up casually like weather. Mel's great, he said, but she's more old school compliance. We're evolving past all that. That's when I knew I wasn't on the team anymore. It was the liability he hadn't figured out how to fire, the risk he hadn't budgeted for, the last canary still chirping in a very flammable coal mine. But here's the thing about getting pushed out of the loop. You start seeing everything: patterns, silences, things the people inside the echo chamber don't notice because they're too busy high-fiving over buzzwords. I started archiving backend logs again, quietly. I watched the traffic spikes, cataloged the IPs hitting our FTP at 3 a.m. I noticed an open port that should have been dead months ago. Nothing dramatic, not yet, just little shimmers of static beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Darren paraded through meetings with all the grace of a guy who once got a standing ovation at a middle school talent show and never recovered. He called me Mel in front of the board. He joked about tinfoil hats when someone brought up risk protocols, even made a crack during a company lunch. At least the office looks better now, right? No more serial killer posters on the elevator. I smiled. I even laughed a little. Let him think I was shrinking. Because I knew something he didn't. I still had keys to the back door, and I never left it unguarded. I didn't rant. I didn't plead. I didn't call HR or start some performative LinkedIn monologue about women in tech. I just got quiet and sharp. You see, you've been in cybersecurity long enough. You stop thinking in quarters and start thinking in breach timelines. You learn to measure days not by meetings attended, but by vulnerabilities closed. And right now, our walls were paper, and the matchbox was already open. So I did what Darren never bothered to learn how to do. I prepared. The first thing I did was revisit my off-grid backup schema. Years ago, after a scare involving a compromised vendor account, convinced our then CTO to approve a side project. Encrypted offline backups stored in physically isolated drives, rotated monthly, logged with hash verifications and checksum reports. The program got quietly shelved during Darren's simplification push, but the hardware still lived, tucked away in a locked cabinet beneath an unused desk in the old server room. That cabinet still had my name on it. Literally. A dusty label, M. Dale Auth. I dusted off the drives, reformatted them, rebuilt the storage structure from scratch, encrypted the contents with a new custom key split across 4 parts, none stored in the same location. I didn't even document it. The passwords lived in my head and nowhere else. Then I started writing alerts, real ones, not the useless urgent update, notifications that Darren had approved for mass rollout, but actual silent watchdog scripts. I deployed them under shell identities on legacy nodes, systems Darren had stripped from the official org chart, but never fully decommissioned. Machines running silently in the background like ghosts under the floorboards. The scripts monitored inbound access attempts, outbound credential scraping, and admin token changes. I coded one to send me a ping if 3 failed login attempts hit a retired endpoint in under 30 seconds. I called that one Cerberus. Another tracked file uploads from inside the marketing cloud. Breadcrumb. I named each one like a prayer whispered before a storm. No one noticed. Then, like clockwork, IT started showing up again, but only after hours. Not officially, not publicly, just one by one. The first was Adrian, one of our lead sysadmins, knocked on my cubicle wall around 6:45 p.m., holding a Red Bull and a panicked twitch behind his eyes. "Hey, Mel, listen. Darren's been asking us to push a new patch through the Horizon Light stack, and it's tanking load times. He's blaming network latency, but it's not that. I think it's the routing table. You mind, I didn't even let him finish." I pulled up the stack trace, walked him through the fix in 15 minutes, and handed him the clean config. He sighed like someone being handed a rope after 3 days in a well. "Thanks. Could you, not mention this? I was never here." After that, became a pattern. Quiet knocks, late pings, off-the-record help requests, bugs no one else could fix, infrastructure glitches Darren couldn't Google his way out of. One even came from the help desk manager who used to roll his eyes at my training sessions. "Hey, Melanie. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but the auto-enrollment system for the new client platform just bricked half the onboardings. And the logs don't make sense. I fixed it. No names, no paper trail." At one point, Darren walked past my desk while I was reviewing an audit log. He gave me the smirk, half pity, half victory, and said, "Glad to see you're still keeping busy. Legacy documentation is important." I smiled back. It's all about the foundation. He didn't know I was using those logs to trace credential handoffs that should have never existed. He didn't see me tagging anomalies with silent alerts, tracking the small cracks that were starting to form under the surface of his shiny new empire. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't paranoid. I knew something was coming. The system was groaning like a bridge under too much weight. The wrong emails were getting through. The right blocks were getting bypassed. Someone or something was poking holes. But I didn't sound the alarm. Not yet. You don't warn a man like Darren. You let him walk straight into the dark. It started with a single email delay. Just 10 seconds. A bounce, a retry, then delivery. Most folks wouldn't notice. Hell, most folks didn't notice, but I did. Because it came from our CFO's assistant, sent internally to payroll, and took the scenic route through a relay in Sao Paulo. That's not how we routed internal messages. Not ever. I logged it, flagged the headers, created a new folder called Amber Drip, not Red Alert. Not yet, but the sky was starting to flicker. The following week, our customer support platform suffered 3 micro outages. Half-second lags, according to Darren's new vendor's dashboard. Normal cloud variance, they said. Except it wasn't variance. The logs showed system hooks reaching out to addresses that didn't exist 3 weeks ago. Ones that had been registered within our own DNS tree, which meant someone had either cloned our routing tables or was deep enough inside to spoof them. That's when the pulse in the back of my skull started to throb. I submitted a low-level ticket to Darren, intermittent latency in internal systems, requesting trace review. He replied 4 hours later. No greeting, no signature. Just, "We're moving fast. Please avoid analysis paralysis." I stared at that phrase for a solid minute. Analysis paralysis, like checking the locks on your doors after hearing footsteps outside was somehow overthinking it. So I sent another note, this time wrapped in bland language he might actually read. Some indicators suggest possible misrouted internal traffic. Might be worth a quick permissions sweep. His response, "The only thing misrouted is our focus. We're onboarding 3 new enterprise clients next quarter. Let's keep momentum." Momentum. That's all Darren wanted. As long as charts pointed up and buzzwords kept flowing, he didn't care what was quietly bleeding out under the hood. At the next board meeting, I wasn't invited. But someone forwarded me the deck. Slide 6 was titled Leaner plus Smarter, Q3 Ops Wins. There it was, my old team's programs rebranded as Access Protocol Layers Removed. Posters, deprioritized. Internal phishing tests, paused in favor of trust-driven culture. Same slide boasted of cost savings, $412,000 YTD. My spine went cold. That afternoon, at exactly 4:13 p.m., Cerberus howled. It was a single ping, an access attempt from a Malaysian IP to an endpoint that no one outside the building should have known about. A forgotten dev server, long retired, only recently reconnected as part of Darren's half-baked platform consolidation initiative. The credentials used were admin level, not expired, not locked. I stared at the dashboard. The alert flashed twice, then disappeared. Whoever it was, they knew how to move like mist, softly, precisely, and without tripping alarms that Darren's team had in place. but my alarms were still running, and they were getting louder. I went back to my archive, pulled up server logs, compared timestamps, cross-referenced access keys. What I found looked less like a breach and more like a testing phase. Like someone was probing, tugging at the seams, measuring response times, mapping out our infrastructure with surgical patience. I didn't sleep that night. I ran packet captures in a sandbox environment. I wrote 3 new scripts. I updated Breadcrumb to track outbound metadata leaks and added a countermeasure that would immediately isolate affected endpoints. But none of that mattered if Darren wouldn't listen. I composed one last message. We may have an emerging compromise. Recommend immediate network segmentation and restricted access protocols. It sat in his inbox for 36 hours. Then he replied, noted, let's circle back after the client summit next week. Circle back, like we were discussing lunch options instead of a ticking time bomb. At that point, I realized I wasn't dealing with denial anymore. I was dealing with negligence. Leadership so addicted to speed, it couldn't feel the brakes melting underfoot. The hum was getting louder, and one more string, just one, was about to snap. It happened on a Tuesday, always a Tuesday. Never dramatic enough to expect disaster, but just close enough to Monday to still feel vulnerable. The email hit Darren's inbox at 9:04 a.m. Subject line, Budget allocation, immediate review sender, Robert L. Ralbrook at board compliance go that last bit. Should have been a red flag even for a half-trained intern. But Darren, in his tailored shirt and caffeine swagger, didn't pause. He was prepping for his 10 a.m. quarterly investor pitch and needed one last slide on budget projections. The email came with an attachment, Q4 financial realignment draft XLSX. He clicked. The file didn't even open. But something else did. It took exactly 3.2 seconds for the payload to embed. By the time he leaned back in his ergonomic chair to sip his double-shot espresso, a script buried inside that fake spreadsheet had already gained elevated privileges using cached tokens from his browser. Another 1.7 seconds later, it executed a command that gave root access to the internet backbone. That script didn't scream. It whispered. It slid past Darren's minimalist antivirus like a thief, slipping through an unlocked window. Across the building, on the 3rd floor, I was at my desk eating a bagel and watching the internal anomaly dashboard tick along quietly. Nothing unusual. A few access blips. A couple of alerts from Breadcrumb about metadata packets being slightly oversized. Normal Tuesday noise. Then it happened. At 9:07 a.m., Cerberus barked loudly. Admin credentials were being used from 2 separate IPs at the same time. One from Darren's machine, the other from a relay node in Lithuania, masked through 3 VPN layers, but dumb enough to leave a timing signature behind. I froze. Every screen I had turned red. The credential vault pinged unauthorized access attempts on accounts that hadn't been touched in years. Endpoint pings jumped. Our SSO platform threw a tantrum, trying to reconcile permission escalations that weren't logged through the usual approval flows. Session tokens started replicating across sandbox environments. The system was bleeding. I opened the access logs, watched in real time as scripts spidered through our permissions network, harvesting cached credentials, mapping user behavior profiles, copying internal comms. It was surgical, efficient, and it was using his credentials. Darren's root. It all led back to one action. One stupid, fatal click. Down the hall, I heard shouting, not panicked yet, but urgent. Chairs scraped back. Phones buzzed. IT was waking up. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stared at the main screen. Because there it was, center of the dashboard, glowing like prophecy. Security Protocol 7 would have prevented this. It wasn't a taunt. It was the name of the alert trigger I'd hard-coded months ago, back when I knew this day would come, but hoped I was wrong. I stood up slowly, walked to the server cabinet, pulled the drive labeled Dead Man's Key and plugged it into the isolated port beneath my desk. The backup spun to life. Behind me, someone burst into the room. One of the younger sysadmins, red-faced and frantic. Melanie, everything's going haywire, admin logins, vault corruption, the platform's freezing. I turned my screen toward him. Pointed at the alert. Read it. He didn't speak, just backed out of the room and ran. Across the network, user accounts started locking. Customer-facing platforms dropped to read-only mode. Marketing's website redirected to a default 503. Our internal file structure restructured itself, folders disappearing mid-click. The credential vault hit 92% extraction before the isolation script kicked in. I looked down at my console. Air gap secured. Backup encryption holding. Reboot node clean. All those years of being laughed off, sidelined, erased. This was the moment the system remembered me. The dashboard was no longer blinking. It was screaming. Security Protocol 7 would have prevented this. Security Protocol 7 would have prevented this. Security Protocol 7 would have prevented this. Line after line, pulsing red. It wasn't just an alert, it was a public obituary for Darren's ego. 9:14 a.m. The cascade had gone full thermonuclear. Credential escalations triggered auto-lockouts. Legacy systems, long ignored but still tied into financial operations, froze mid-query. The HR database dumped its active session log, locked itself, then sent an automated notification to the Department of Labor Compliance mailbox. External regulatory watchdogs were pinged with high-severity security reports via encrypted dispatch. Thank you, Cerberus. One alert even landed on a federal server before our own CTO got eyes on it. And I just sat there, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the company's nervous system convulse under the weight of one man's arrogance. Down the hall, the elevator dinged. Rapid footsteps, leather soles on tile. Then the door slammed open so hard it shook the exit sign. Darren. His tie was loose, face the color of old drywall, sweat haloing under his arms, barreled into the IT war room like a reality show contestant too late for the final rose. What the hell is going on? Why is legal calling me? Why are the servers down? Why are we locked out of the CRM? Silence. IT staff hovered in that stunned half-glance you give a man mid-freefall. A few screens were still active, flashing red. Someone had the dashboard up on the big monitor. And there, bold as a baseball bat to the teeth, Security Protocol 7 would have prevented this initiating breach containment mode. External audit triggered. I stood up. Calm, unhurried, I didn't speak. Just walked over to the big screen, slowly, deliberately, and pointed. Darren blinked. He looked at the words, then back at me. His lips moved, but nothing came out. He tried again. This is your system? Someone behind me whispered, just loud enough to cut the room in half. She tried to warn us. It echoed. Darren's face collapsed into something between fear and disbelief. Not anger, he'd burned through that already. This was new. This was a man standing in the rubble of a building he swore was fireproof. The CTO arrived seconds later, holding his phone like it was a live grenade. He saw the screen, didn't ask questions. Just turned to me, jaw tight. Melanie, what are we dealing with? I pulled the printed breach report from my bag and handed it to him. Fully tabbed, logged, time-stamped. Updated as of 6 minutes ago. Active credential extraction from Darren's account. System-wide root access achieved. Breach origin via phishing vector. Likely spearphished using internal behavioral data. I've isolated primary nodes and secured the admin vaults. Client data exposure unknown. Depends how long the vault scripts were running before the alert hit. Estimated 2.5 minutes. The CTO blinked, and our backups. I gestured toward the drive humming beside my terminal. Encrypted, offline, 3 layers deep, restorable to clean state within 40 minutes if IT reroutes properly. A silence settled, heavy, real. Darren looked around, waiting for anyone, to come to his rescue. But this wasn't a boardroom anymore. This was triage. And I was the only one holding the bandages. Opened his mouth again, but this time the CTO cut him off, voice ice cold. You clicked the link, Darren stammered. It looked like it came from Robert. It had the logo and the CTO didn't answer. Just turned back to me. Anything else we should know? I nodded. Regulators were auto-pinged per Protocol 7 escalation clause. We'll get a call within the hour. Legal should be looped now. Behind me, someone muttered, Jesus, and someone else added, "She built this system, didn't she?" I didn't respond. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth was doing all the talking now, and it had my signature at the bottom. They called the emergency board session that same afternoon. No catered lunch. No preamble. No PowerPoint decks with animated slides or corporate fluff. Just 12 very tired, very angry people in a frostbitten conference room with too many windows and not enough places for Darren to hide. Showed up late, of course, tie still loose, shirt wrinkled like he'd been sleeping in his car. Maybe he had. He carried a laptop and a folder that looked suspiciously empty. I was already there, seated, calm, my binder in front of me, nothing flashy. Just a matte black folder labeled Incident Report, Breach 8.6.25. Inside, 73 pages of reality. The chairman didn't waste time. Let's begin with the events of this morning. Melanie. I didn't nod. I didn't clear my throat. I just opened the binder, slid a neatly printed copy across the table, and said, all details are time-stamped. Emails, warnings, vetoes, escalation triggers, system logs, backups, screenshots of credential scrapes. Every procedural flag ignored is highlighted in yellow. Red tabs are vetoed policy recommendations. Blue tabs are breached timeline details. Page 62 lists the external systems auto-notified under compliance regulations. No one touched their coffee. The board members flipped through pages with increasing urgency, the soft rustle of thick paper and realization filling the room like static. The VP of Finance, one of the few who'd once praised Darren's operational agility, paused at a screenshot showing Darren's signature under a no further action required response to Protocol 7. This is your signature? Darren opened his mouth, shut it, nodded. The chairman leaned forward, fingers steepled like a man preparing to fire a cannon. And you were made aware of these vulnerabilities. How many times? I spoke without raising my voice. 7 documented warnings, 3 verbal, all logged. First warning was issued March 19th. Final written notice was sent July 1st, 6:08 p.m., titled Recommendation to Reinstate Security Protocol 7. Did you receive that email, Mr. Caldwell? Darren looked at me, then at the board, then down at his empty folder. I did. The silence that followed was biblical. The head of legal broke it. We've already received 2 queries from regulatory bodies asking for an initial statement. Due to the timing of the credential scraping and the scale of access, potentially looking at mandatory disclosures under at least 3 statutes. The chairman nodded. Effective immediately, Mr. Caldwell. You are suspended pending full investigation. Darren's chair scraped as he stood, or maybe stumbled. His eyes met mine, something wild flickering behind the hollow. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, sound so final it could have come with a lock turning. The chairman turned back to me. Melanie, on behalf of the board and the executive team, we want to thank you for your foresight, your documentation, and your preparedness. You prevented what could have been catastrophic. The CTO nodded. Your systems, your backups, they gave us a lifeline. I allowed myself a slow, shallow breath, not a smile, not victory, just oxygen. I only did what I was hired to do, I said. Secure the infrastructure. Protect the data. Mitigate damage when ignored. No applause, no slow claps, just the shift. You could feel it in the air. I wasn't wallpaper anymore. I wasn't the paranoid compliance lady or the legacy leftover. I was the one who still had the keys, and everyone in that room finally understood the cost of changing the locks without asking who built the doors. 3 weeks later, they offered me the position. No champagne, no balloon drop, just a simple, direct email from the chairman's office with the subject line, formal offer, Chief Security Officer effective immediately. I didn't blink, didn't cheer, just clicked accept. The announcement went out the next morning. It hit inboxes with that same sterile formatting they'd used to announce quarterly birthdays or when someone retired after 38 years. Except this time, it didn't disappear into the scroll. People stopped by my desk that day. Quietly, ones who used to avoid eye contact now nodded with a kind of reverence. Not pity, not small talk, just acknowledgement, a new respect, earned the hard way. I said very little in return. There was nothing left to explain. The breach had said it all. Darren's office stayed empty. No one dared move into it. His name was still etched on the glass, faint and flaking, like a warning left in permanent marker. I passed it every day on the way to my new corner workspace. Not flashy, not huge, but with a direct line to both the server room and the boardroom. Right where it needed to be. On my first Friday as CSO, we had an all-hands. The usual awkward muffins and weak coffee set up in the break room. Nervous energy in the air, like everyone expected a speech. I gave them something better. I walked in holding a rolled-up poster tube. Walked straight to the main corridor, the one Darren had once declared needed open, cluttered visual flow, and unrolled the sheet. It was one of mine. Not even a new design, just black type on a white background, bold, blunt, and absolutely unmissable. Click smart, not fast. Below that, one mistake can cost us everything. And at the bottom, in smaller print, a new line I'd added the night before, your best firewall. Respect the quiet woman in the room. I stepped back, smoothed the corners, looked down the hallway. Not a single person laughed. Stopped to read it. Some nodded. One engineer I'd helped at 2 a.m. during a vendor misfire stood by it for a solid minute before walking away, shoulders squared a little tighter. No fanfare, no speech. No Darren popping in with a joke about Mel's serial killer flyers. Just silence and truth. Later that day, I walked past the glass wall of the executive wing. Someone had already peeled off Darren's name. The residue left behind looked like a scar. My name was going on a door now. But the message had already been delivered. Not in words, not in threats, in survival, in systems that held, in a firewall no one respected until it was the only thing left standing. That was the win. Quiet, cold, absolute. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.